When Ukraine pleaded for Western fighters, the world's attention turned to the F-16, but in the shadows of that debate stood another jet, smaller, lighter, and built by a nation of only 10 million people. The Saab JAS 39 Gripen, dismissed by some as too small to matter, began to emerge as the aircraft designed for exactly this kind of war: dispersed, adaptable, impossible to pin down. As Russian missiles cratered runways and drones haunted the skies, Ukrainian strategists saw in the Gripen not just a fighter, but a survivor, one that could take off from a highway, link seamlessly with NATO's eyes, and disappear before the enemy even understood what it was seeing. This is the story of how a modest Scandinavian design could become the unexpected cornerstone of Ukraine's air resilience. A David among giants in a war of attrition that demanded speed, cunning, and endurance. Before we continue, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Set the geopolitical scene in mid-2024, Ukraine's ongoing plea for advanced Western fighters as it faces waves of Russian air and missile attacks. Outline the debate surrounding the F-16 versus other options and how Sweden's Gripen quietly entered the conversation. Introduce the jet's origins, a Cold War product designed to defend Sweden's neutrality with dispersed rapid response tactics. Explain why this DNA suddenly mattered again in modern Europe's most brutal war. Delve into Ukraine's air war reality. Aging MiG-29s and Su-27s stretched thin. Limited infrastructure under constant bombardment. Detail how Sweden, cautious, begins discreet talks with key EU and NATO partners about Gripen transfers. Highlight Ukrainian Air Force leadership assessing the Gripen's combat data, its STOL capabilities, and low-maintenance footprint. Include pilot interviews and internal dialogue. Skepticism, hope, and tension between politics and survival. Explore how Russia's growing dominance in electronic warfare and long-range missile engagements renders many traditional aircraft vulnerable. Present Swedish advisors demonstrating Gripen's electronic countermeasures, radar agility, and network integration. Tension rises as Moscow warns that any foreign jet will be treated as a hostile NATO extension. Ukrainian pilots begin conversion training in secret bases in Central Europe, but provide an in-depth analysis of the Gripen systems, its PSO-5A radar, advanced data link, and ability to communicate across NATO networks. Compare operational costs, turnaround time, and sortie rates with the F-16 and MiG-29. Blend this with cinematic narrative, a Ukrainian pilot's first training flight, realizing how responsive and intuitive the aircraft feels. Include reflections from Swedish engineers who designed it to fight with intelligence, not mass. The first Gripens arrived in Ukraine under grey dawn skies, their presence known only to a handful of commanders and pilots. Within weeks, they were dispersed across sections of abandoned highways and repurposed rural roads exactly as Swedish doctrine intended. Mechanics worked from trucks instead of hangars, refueling and rearming within minutes. The Russians, used to hunting fixed airbases, suddenly found nothing where their satellites expected targets to be. The breakthrough came quietly. One night, Russian cruise missiles streaked toward Dnipro's industrial outskirts. Two Gripens, scrambled from a highway near Poltava, climbed through the mist, guided by NATO data feeds. Their sensors locked onto a missile swarm no human eye could yet see. Moments later, twin Meteor missiles launched, silver arcs vanishing into the clouds. Seconds later, radar screens cleared. Two Russian missiles downed. Small victory, but monumental in message. When the pilots landed back on the cracked asphalt, they said little. They didn't need to. The system had worked. The dispersion, the coordination, the machine itself. A fighter once mocked as too small to matter had just proven it could protect a nation under siege. In the silence that followed, one commander whispered, "Now they'll know we're not standing still." What tactical decision surprised you most so far? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Russians reacted fast. Satellite imagery confirmed new aircraft signatures Ukraine had never possessed, and Moscow wasted no time escalating. Within days, the S-400 and Buk M3 systems were repositioned closer to the front, and specialized radar units began sweeping for the faint electronic fingerprints of the Gripen. Russian state media declared the foreign jets legitimate targets, signaling that the skies would become even deadlier. Ukraine's response was as unorthodox as the fighters themselves. Gripens began operating in rotating cells, constantly shifting locations, taking off from sections of highway one morning and dirt roads by dusk. Maintenance crews moved under cover of darkness, hauling fuel and armaments in civilian trucks. Every sortie became an exercise in deception. On one mission near Kharkov, a pair of Gripens drew radar fire from an S-400 battery. The pilots dove to treetop height, vanishing from Russian screens as NATO satellites tracked the missile trails overhead. Falcon, one of the Ukrainian pilots, later recalled his cockpit alarms, screaming, yet he held his course, trusting his systems and his training. The missiles never found them. The order came before dawn, coded, brief, and final. Russian glide bomb platforms operating from a concealed airstrip east of the Dnipro had been devastating Ukrainian positions for days. Mobile launchers hidden under camouflage nets were sending out 500-kilogram bombs that glided silently for dozens of kilometers before striking trenches, schools, and power substations. Every attempt to locate them had failed until now. NATO surveillance satellites picked up faint heat signatures consistent with Su-34 activity. The coordinates were transmitted through encrypted channels to Ukrainian Air Command, where a decision was made. The Gripens would strike. It would be their most dangerous mission yet. For aircraft were selected to carrying precision-guided GBU-49 bombs, 2 equipped with electronic warfare pods. Their launch point, a hidden strip of reinforced highway near Kryvyi Rih. No control towers, no hangars, just a patch of asphalt and a handful of engineers who'd been working through the night under blackout tarps. As dawn broke, the pilots stood beside their jets, each knowing that this mission would test everything the Gripen stood for: mobility, precision, and survival. The squadron leader, Calcine Hawk, scanned the sky. "We fly low, we fly clean, and we come home invisible," he said quietly before climbing into the cockpit. Engines ignited with a muted growl, their exhaust shrouded by the cold air. The 4 Gripens roared down the improvised strip and vanished into the mist, hugging the terrain at less than 100 feet. Below radar, they followed the Dnipro's winding path, guided by real-time data from NATO satellites and AWACS aircraft orbiting hundreds of miles away. Minutes later, they neared the strike zone. Russian radars were active but disoriented, their frequencies jammed intermittently by electronic interference. Falcon, the lead EW pilot, maintained a calm tone, their eyes blinking, windows open. Hawk switched to targeting mode. The PSO-5A radar swept once, then locked. Thermal imagery confirmed movement. 2 Su-34s parked under camo netting, engines cooling. The decision window was seconds. Hawk switched to targeting mode. The PSO-5A radar swept once, then locked. Thermal imagery confirmed movement. 2 Su-34s parked under camo netting, engines cooling. The decision window was seconds. Russian air defenses reacted instantly, launching a storm of missiles. The Gripens dropped to treetop height, their countermeasures flooding the air with false targets. Through the chaos, their data link kept each pilot aware of the other's positions, a moving web of precision and trust. Minutes later, they were gone, slipping back over Ukrainian territory, unscathed. At the forward command post, analysts confirmed what the pilots already knew. Both targets destroyed, the glide bomb threat blunted in the quiet after the storm. Hawk sat in his cockpit, the hum of the engine steady beneath him. Too small to matter, he thought, almost smiling. Not anymore. Ukraine's Gripen fleet survived successive Russian missile raids thanks to their mobility and electronic defenses. NATO intelligence quietly confirms that the Gripen's performance has surpassed expectations. While small in number, their presence alters Russian flight patterns, proof that deterrence doesn't require mass, only reliability and reach. Analyze how the Gripen's integration into Ukraine's war effort reshaped Western perceptions of small air forces. Discuss the rebirth of the distributed defense philosophy, how mobility, networked sensors, and adaptability can rival traditional air power. Reflect on Sweden's shift from neutrality to active European defense partner. Look ahead to what comes next. Full Gripen squadrons in Ukrainian service, joint training with NATO, and Sweden's growing influence within the alliance. Close with a cinematic reflection, the fighter once dismissed as too small became a symbol of a nation's adaptability and a people's defiance. Victory not through size but through design, discipline, and resilience.